Be great. That's the whole purpose of today. Again, everybody's got tomorrow 4:30. The draft starts. You can show up as soon as probably 3:30. Anybody coming out, we'll have food from Mexican restaurant.
Your favorite?
I don't even know what he's talking about. I don't even listen to anything he says.
It's called La Salsa if you want to do something nice for them. They're out of gift cards.
So is Draymond going to be in the room this year?
Oh, I don't know. He may be. I don't think he's here in the Bay Area right now, but he said he might be coming back tomorrow, so I don't know. Can't keep him out if he wants to come in, I guess.
Bob, the other day you said you really hadn't wrapped your mind around the draft yet, and it was a day after the season ended, but now you've had at least a few days, right, to start.
Yeah.
Are you ready and geared up?
No. Are you guys rested and relaxed? No, I don't think anybody is. Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of good people that have been focused on it all year, so you rely on the people you work with, and they're very good, and getting our heads around it. I mean, we have 28, 58, but the draft is always really fluid and constantly changing. Seems to change more often as you get closer to it. A lot of potential things that get floated about, but I think we'll be ready come whatever time tomorrow, 4:30.
With the roster in the next season and the injuries, is this a draft where you might trade into maybe trying to get an extra pick? I know you already have two.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be aware of roster spots. I mean, we'd like to have as many picks as we can, but I think we have to be aware that we've got some youth already. Who'll be back? I mean, how many spots will we have to fill? What positions? But we think it's a decently deep draft, so we'll see if anything makes sense to get another pick or not, and what we would do with it. But yeah, it's there's a lot of moving parts to this one this year.
There are a couple high-level prospects that are going through injury rehabs or have kind of injury red flags because of the situation you're facing, where you're going to have at least one guy, maybe two guys on long rehabs next year. Does that take those guys off the table for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's everything. You factor all that stuff in, right? I mean, who's going to be potentially available next year to play? Who that person is that a veteran? Is that a rookie? Is that a previous young player? Is that a new young player? Yes, I mean, we're going to need, I think, even the guys that are healthy have played a lot of basketball. We're talking about, Steph, Draymond, Andre, those type of guys have played a lot of basketball. So, we're going to need guys that can play big minutes and hopefully contribute and just eat up minutes as much as they can. So it does factor into whether it's the draft decision or decisions in July that you have to utilize that and react to it and respond to it in the best way you can.
What do you think is the team that could be addressed in at least some fashion with the draft?
Biggest need? I don't know, just good players. We good young players. I mean, whatever position they are, those are the highest. Those players have the most value in the NBA. Rookie contract players that show themselves to have a skill and can play. Especially, maybe next year we afford more opportunity for who we pick. Maybe we get a guy that can step in. I think we will have more opportunity next year, no matter what happens in free agency. I think we'll have more of an opportunity for a young guy. What do they do with that? Do we pick the right guy? How much does Steve want to use that player? What position he is? I don't really know, but we're just good young players.
You guys actually have a draft prospect in your organization already. What's that like? It's something new for you guys, someone that you can scout that's already within the organization.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Alan Smiley.
Oh, him. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, the rules are. That's going to probably change more and more. Whether it's college kids, I think international kids are choosing that route, and so it gives, whether it's even us or another team, a chance to kind of get to know that individual better. And so certainly, there's a lot of guys. He's one of the guys that was in Santa Cruz and is a draftable player. But I think a lot of I don't know that it's a secret. I think a lot of other teams probably have seen him as well. But sure, once you coach a guy, or Aaron Miles knows him better because he's coached him. His teammates know him better. So it gives you a little bit of more of an awareness. I don't know how big. I mean, we're still drafting what we see out there, so factored in.
Whoever you take, I mean, Aaron coaching the summer league, how excited are you for him to work with those young guys?
Great. I mean, it's always exciting to see. I think a lot of our guys have already. Steve's pretty good at delegating that job. Steve did it. Everybody forgets Steve did it his first year. He coached the summer league team, which seems like 100 years ago. But yeah, it's a great. The G League is a fantastic. The summer league, that's a training ground to learn. I think it's great we've hired people at all levels. I mean, Kent Lacob was the GM. Kirk was originally down there. Going back to even when we bought the team in South Dakota, and to see where it is now. So yeah, to see Aaron cut his teeth down there and now coach our summer league team, it's all the evolution of the NBA, which is great. And summer league is I remember summer league started. Warren Legary started it I don't know how many years ago, and he had the idea to put it in Vegas, and he showed me a napkin of how many teams. I remember this. He had 6 teams. He said, "I think we can get these 6 teams to go to Vegas and move it out of Long Beach." So summer league, even by itself, it's a whole deal now. I mean, it's kind of like the NBA's summer meetings. It's not officially called that, but I know the baseball has their winter meetings. A lot of business is done. Wherever the top pick goes, those games are literally sold out at Thomas and Mack. So it's a good chance for people to learn their craft, young players to get acclimated, and young coaches to start learning how to coach at the NBA level.
Bob, when you guys are picking as late as you are, is it only ever best player available, or does positional need factor into that at all?
I think, Nick, it's usually best player available, unless I've never really experienced a straight up tie. Sometimes that happens where you're kind of it's a lot at that number it's not sometimes as obvious if you've got 6 or 7 people weighing in to get complete buy-in on one guy is sometimes a little harder because you're looking at players that usually are imperfect. If they had all the tools and checked all the boxes, they wouldn't be there at 28. So you have different opinions. So sometimes it gets to the point where a group is split and they say, well, look, if it's that close, let's go with position. Let's go with an area where we need more help or an area of deficiency. Usually it isn't, but it can happen where you're kind of right up against it and you say, all right, well, if it's that close, this is an area where we need it more than another. So sometimes it happens that way, but I don't often see it go, here's a really good player, we don't really need that position, let's pass on him. Usually our philosophy is you take that guy.
You guys have talked about 16-game players, and I know you always want that, but would it maybe be could you lean more focus on a specific talent that can play over 82 versus going for purely playoff kinds of players?
Yeah, we might. I mean, you'd like to get both, sometimes it's hard in the draft to view a guy as what he may or may not be. It's still early. It's a little easier in free agency to maybe say, I think this guy can or can't play in the playoffs, because you've seen kind of what that guy's pedigree is, and you've seen his resume in the league. In the draft, it's a little harder. I mean, you obviously want a guy that you can project playing in the playoffs, because that's what we're all trying to do, is win playoff games. But yeah, I mean, I think can you find a guy that has a skill? Can you find a guy that you believe has that potential to do it? I don't think we draft guys and go, well, this guy. I understand your question, and it's fair. But we wouldn't draft a guy and just say, well, this guy can't play in the playoffs, but he'll help us in the regular season. I think sometimes that's a little bit easier to do, like I said, in free agency, to make that delineation.
You always want shooting, but is shooting, no matter what, much more important this season?
Well, yeah, if Clay's out and whatever our team is, we're likely to be diminished in that area. Does that mean you try to do that through trade, free agency, draft? The hard part is every team. I mean, shooting is at a premium, maybe at the highest premium it's ever been. If you watch the finals, and somebody mentioned, the team that made the most threes every game won that game. I don't know if that's a direct, obvious correlation, but the point is that it's becoming more than ever a skill that is in demand. People pay for it. People value it. We always have. I mean, we've obviously are fortunate enough to have some great shooters, but you can never have enough of that stuff.
Do you have any early medical updates? Has Clay had his surgery?
No.
So the teams get a month or more to look at this, just focus on the draft. For 5 years, you've had, 5 days after the season ends and you go to the draft. What have you learned about what's important to focus in a condensed time like that?
You have to rely on your staff. I mean, micromanaging doesn't work. I mean, you have to trust the people you work with. And what you learn is that, like you said, it's a very compressed window, whether it's the draft or free agency. And so you have to trust the people that are focused on that and have been focused on that. And, I don't know what's right. I kind of joke about it, but it's somewhat uncommon to have such a small amount of time. And these are huge decisions we're trying to make and get right here in a short window of time. And there's also a mental, your fatigue level and just how do you kind of ramp it back up. But these decisions we make tomorrow and in the next couple of weeks will, they'll affect next year and the following year and the following year. So you really have to be on point. So you rely on your group and make the best decisions you can.
Bob, all things you've gotten out of the recent late first round and early second round picks, I guess, with Kevon and Damian and Jacobs, I think, Jordan.
Yeah, so let's see. Well, going back to, obviously Draymond that obviously worked. But Festus I thought was good. He helped us, play and was obviously, had an injury, but I think he was a good pick. Nedovic, probably didn't. Damian's been, he's been injured. He started for us and was helpful. Looney kind of was written off, and obviously, he's, really, to his credit and our coaching staff, developed well and become a big part of our team. Jacob, to be determined. I'm trying to think who else. Jordan Bell, yeah, Jordan. I mean, McCall. They're all different stories. And the point is that maybe you like to get them all right. We try, but I don't think anybody's that good. No purport that anybody can get all those right. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the chances of success at that range is pretty low. Doesn't mean you don't. If you get it right, it's a huge payoff. Sometimes it takes time to see if you got it right or not. I think Looney was probably forgotten early, and now, like I said, to his credit, it's become something. Was that a good pick? I guess so. I mean, but again, I think you have to wait a little bit on some of these things to really self-critique, and we do that up in our room. We say, what did we get right or wrong? Sometimes you grade the draft and say, we look back on last year's draft and say, why did we have that guy ranked so high? If we had picked him, we would have been wrong. So it's important to self-regulate on some of that stuff and not be so arrogant to think, well, we're smarter and we're better, and that never, I don't think you don't learn anything from that.
Do you have an idea of how to work out?
Maybe 40, something like that, around that. I'm not 40 to 50, I guess.
A few of those came in a couple times.
Yeah, a few guys did come back a few times. A couple times, yeah.
Do you have the autonomy, the freedom this year to use every, financial avenue you can? I remember last year you guys didn't know if you were going to use the mid-level. Right. Obviously, DeMarcus became available, but do you have the freedom this year to use it all? Yeah, I mean that's I know you everybody here covers our team. I really would like to say I'm fortunate to work for someone that people say these things, but winning has always been the primary goal. And we run a business, so it's not being completely fiscally irresponsible. But every time I've went to Joe, it seems that has benefited us competitively. He's responded affirmatively and said, okay, So there's never really been a hard budget, so to speak. We got to be cost conscious too, though. I think that anybody would, but I will say the decisions we've made, I think. Don't trust my words. Trust our payroll. I mean, just look at what it is. It's big, and so, like I said with Cousins last year, you want to be smart about it. I don't think you just spend it to spend it or spend money to buy a pick tomorrow. You want to do it to win. But fortunately, we have somebody that is willing to engage in all that dialogue, and usually, if it's a consensus, yeah, do it.
Can you explain their exception or injured player exception, just how that process works, and if that applies to you guys when you have to apply for it, are you guaranteed to get it? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, and generally it's a rule where if you have a player on your roster that is unable to play for an pretty extended amount of time, the league affords you an exception to get another player, and the value of the exception differs based on, but it's up to a certain amount, and I don't know the exact number, if it's 9 or I don't know what the exact number is, but gives you a little more. It's just these are all, a lot of people don't understand, and I understand why they don't understand the cap. Only reason I understand it is I've been around. It hasn't evolved, although the CBA has changed in 20 years. The exceptions are relatively the same. The bird exception, the non-bird, the mid-level. Now they did add a taxpayer mid-level, but the biannual, all these things are not, the trade exceptions, the amount that you have to, what you can aggregate in a trade. Even though the CBA has evolved and the cap has gone up and the luxury tax was then put in, the fundamental rules are still the same. So the disabled player exception is just another tool to provide optionality for your roster, is really what it is. It's not football, it's not a hard cap, it's a soft cap, and that's another way to say, well, we've got an injured guy, we've used our mid-level, we've used our minimum, how can we sign or get a player that is larger than that, or how can we acquire a player at a bigger number? So it's just another tool.
Well, is it still considered 9 to 12 months these days? I mean, or does it depend when they go in there and see what all the damage might be?
Yeah, appreciate the question. I just want to do draft stuff today.
Okay, but this gets into
in general,
how long you might be without the guy.
Oh yeah, I don't know right now.
Yeah,
I really don't know. I don't know until I know more. To speculate, I'd just be kind of guessing.
Okay.
And I know what I guessed would be written and wouldn't even matter.
Not
But no, I understand. No, you're not being difficult.
Bob, obviously, every draft, you mentioned how it affects the future of this team, but every draft does. But considering the state of this roster, slew of injuries, is this maybe the most important draft you've had in your career?
No, I think the most important one was the Harrison, Draymond, when we had the 7th pick. I mean, they're all important, but I think the most important draft would be a year where we were picking 1st or 2nd or 3rd or 4th. Those are you don't want to miss ever, but the most important decisions you make, I think, are you don't want to get that wrong. We don't want to get the 28th pick wrong. We don't want to get anything wrong. It's just the difference between signing a max player or a minimum. If you don't get a minimum right, okay, well, that's a minimum contract is 2% of your salaries. I mean, it's literally 2%. If the salary cap's $100 million, and I'm being loose here, and you sign a player for $2 million, that's 2% of your payroll is a minimum player. It's a lot different when you're drafting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. If you miss on that, that's a hard one to recover from. You miss on signing a player that costs 15, 20, 30. That's a different thing to recover from. 28, I don't know what that guy makes, $1.5 million. Yeah, it's an opportunity to get better. Is it change the? It can, like I said, you can. There's been guys that have been drafted there that change the course of a franchise. It does happen. It's rare. We try to do that every year. We hold ourselves to the highest standard that we can. If we don't, then you guys all help us with that. So, is it the most important draft? I think they're all pretty important.
You mentioned being careful. You're drafting 58 for the roster for sure, or is that kind of?
I mean, 58 may provide an option to have a two-way. Now with the two-way contracts, maybe that's another way to add another guy, take another look at a guy. But at that point in the draft, it's 2 minutes between picks. It's happening fast. We'll have already picked someone. Who knows if we get another pick? Will we have picked someone else? Will we have done anything else? It's only 2 picks better than somebody that isn't drafted. So, how valuable is it? It's nice to have. So we'll see what kind of who ends up even being available there.
You said last year that you were still, I guess, learning that two-way deal and trying to get in the swing of it. How do you feel with that and using that going forward?
I think it's great. I mean, how do I feel? I mean, I think it's a great tool for players and the league. It's just another 2 spots to. We've obviously used those guys. And it's good. It's a way for guys that are kind of just in between the G League and the NBA to find that small space to feel like they're part of the NBA, that we can feel like we retain their rights. It's not just a guy that we really like that plays in the G League. It's actually somebody where we own their rights. We can, utilize them, and they get to play in NBA games. It's a 17-man roster now instead of a 15, which is good. I think it's good for players. It's good for us. It doesn't cost what another guy would cost, and for us especially because we've played 500 and whatever games in the last 5 years. It's been good to have guys like that can come up and spell minutes for some of the other guys. So I think it's been a good thing for us and the league.
Kind of say plug-and-play guys. People are expecting to draft someone, put them in the lineup right away. Where you are you able to pick people and say, we know this guy's got a lot of potential, maybe we can coach him up? Or is it worth taking that risk that he doesn't have some specific skill that you're drafting for?
I mean, I think you got to balance it. You got to balance it between, is this a guy that can play next year? Is this a guy that can definitely not play next year? What kind of team are we going to be? What type of expectations do we have internally? How would we use this guy? How willing is Steve to like a player like this? Does he fit our system? Did he play 1 year? Did he play 4? Did he play 3? How mature is his body? How mature is he mentally? All those. Is he injured? Is he slightly injured? Is he fully healthy? Is he recovering? Does he need surgery? I mean, we drafted all kinds of guys. Draymond, you'd look back and say he was ready, but he didn't even really play much. He's about as ready as you can get in that range. He didn't play a ton. Festus was pretty ready, but he played and he'd had an injury in college. I'm just looking back at our own previous history, but I think you factor all those things in, and you do hope, though, CW, you do hope that, sure, I mean, whoever you draft, you'd love to find him in the rotation. That'd be a nice hope. So, it depends.
Do you have a difference? You mentioned, I don't know what the last question is. I'm not
We'll do one more after yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not that good.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference, 1, 2, or 3 years in college, 1, 2, 3, or 4 years in college? You mentioned that. Would you rather have someone, if you're going to draft at that area, that maybe been in a program for a while?
I don't know. I mean, they're all different, right? I mean, everybody's matures differently physically and mentally and emotionally. So, a first-year guy sometimes is more physically mature than a 3 or 4 year guy. It seems like nowadays it's pretty rare you can get a 4-year. I mean, but it happens. I don't know. I mean, that's a fair question. I think we still try to just take the best guy available.
Do you have an idea of your summer league team yet, of who would be on there as far as
I think Jacob's going to play. Other than that, it'll be probably whoever we draft. We have an idea. We have a board up there with an idea of people we're talking to that are free agents that might play on it, young free agents. But otherwise, on our roster, I don't think there's another guy. I don't think Damian's doing it. McKinney's going to go out there and work out. I don't think he's going to play. I think he's going to work out in Vegas. But it'll primarily be Jacob will see what he can do, and then the draft picks, putting them out there.